Hey y'all, my name is Haley, and if you see the giant group of freaky, glittery wolves on the wall, that's mine. I'm a graduating printmaking major, and I'm going to talk about my senior show. My inspiration for this project was my own journey of trauma and healing and needing to express that. To me, this project is the most authentic and raw of my work yet. I wanted to speak against lone wolf stereotypes and the glamorizing of mental health issues, which I'll get into later. And a lot of my choices for this collection was inspired by punk philosophy, which we'll also get into later. I also use personal writing to challenge my work to be extremely vulnerable. So some of these pieces are direct memories and experiences, and then some of them are expressions of emotions and then like my own reflections added onto that. So all of the text is autobiographical. The glamorization of serious mental illness on social media is counterpointing its stigmatism, but it's not a good or particularly effective way. We used to cover up mental illness in secrecy and as something not to be talked about, but now it's being glorified and proclaimed as something good. A great example would be how people describe Vincent van Gogh, and that he ate yellow paint to be happy, and that he could only get his work with his mental illness. He wouldn't have been nearly as good of an artist when he actually wrote about how much greater he would be if it wasn't for his mental illness. And he went in and out of mental hospitals his entire life and then eventually ended his life. To counteract and speak out against this, I'm telling my story and my own personal experiences as raw and complicated and as painful as they really are. I'm showing it as multifaceted as I can. I'm showing that the journey is not linear to healing, and ultimately that the goal is healing. I'm not wanting you to think that this work is tragically beautiful, but I want you to understand and feel the emotions I'm trying to portray. So then the glamorization of mental health and the stereotypes of trauma is ultimately why wolves. The lone wolf stereotype is very common. It's where you're too tough for this world, nobody could possibly understand you, and you have to do it alone, which isn't realistic or helpful at all. So ultimately, I'm using the stereotype of the lone wolf in the way that it's not really intended. I'm really big into animal science and biology. And so I know that in real life, lone wolves don't survive. A lone wolf will make it for about a month, but can't make it for a long time. It relies on others, just like people. And so this is the same way where this lone wolf stereotype is flawed because you can't survive like that. That's not a sustainable way to live. It's also with the idea of big bad wolf. Lots of times, people who deal with mental illness will try to put on a really tough exterior so as to protect themselves. And this is that same idea. This wolf is not really tough. This wolf is not really big and bad, and you can kind of see where it wants to be, but ultimately it's not. The wolf I'm using as a character to describe trauma brain. This is basically the mindset that you can get with having trauma. Also, with the wolf character are some themes of domestication. This links back to the punk philosophy kind of ideas and wanting to be fit into a mold and defying against it. And so you can see it's a conglomerate of fighting against this imagery of a wolf, but also embracing it with the idea of domestication. So, both the bird and the wolf are examples of anthropomorphism. This is the attribution of human traits, emotions, or intentions to non human entities. So I'm using the symbolism that comes along with wolves, which I just explained. And then birds are symbols of freedom and moving forward. And so this I'm using as healing. And at this point, I've mentioned punk philosophy multiple times in this presentation and have not yet explained what it is. So there's punk, which is the music genre and the style of dress that's very edgy, deconstructed, lots of black tattoos, graffiti, whatever you've got in your brain. And then there's also punk as a philosophy and attitude, which goes beyond its genre. At its core, it's nonconformity and fights for freedom of expression beyond the all American mold. What I mean by all American mold is it is inherently punk to choose to be an artist in a world where everybody's trying to be in the medical field for money. The all American mold is fitting into a certain set of perfect ideas, being the perfect little boy or girl. And punk fights against that and fights more for the expression of everybody being their most unique self. Punk, in a lot of ways, is the idea that to be cool is to just be yourself and to speak up for what you believe in. Punk also has ideas about recycling and using what you already have and not needing to consume a whole bunch of materials. So I also use that in the creation of this work, which I will. So, what makes this work punk? It's unapologetically and aggressively vulnerable. It pushes boundaries of what should be in a gallery space by all of my scribbles and glitter on it. Glitter is generally looked down on as material, and it's pretty out of the box to scribble on your work like that and not something that's considered traditional, which adds to this destructive and recycling process to make the work. And all of the text is in a punk mindset. And it begins as questioning myself and a right to do what I want to, and ultimately coming to the conclusion that I am in control of what I do and that I shouldn't be worried about what other people think of me, but really just healing and getting to where I need to go at my own pace. So, if glitter is super messy and looked down on as a material for fine art, then why am I using it? There's somewhat of a vindictive, anti classist undertone with using the glitter. I also feel like it, for me, it represents aggressive femininity. I want my work to be feminine in the most chaotic way possible. And glitter can symbolize multiple things. It doesn't just have to be aggressive femininity. For different people, it reminds them of being a child. It can be humorous to use it. It can also be like the light at the end of the tunnel as the sparkles. It can be more chaos and messiness to the story. There's lots of reasons to use glitter, and it's a really integral part to these pieces. And the other part of the glitter is that the whole process of making this is really mixed media. I am a major maximalist. And so it was great and super releasing for me for this work to go through a period of destruction and transformation. There's layers of marker and paper underneath the prints. There's paper and marker and glitter on top of the prints. I even have a print where I printed on top of the glitter. It was a very intuitive process and was a way for me to release even more emotion. I feel like without this, they wouldn't have communicated nearly as well. And a quick little side comment to go back to the punk philosophy ideas that I was talking about, and where I mentioned recycling, using what you had, not over consuming. A lot of these Shinkale papers, which is the process of collaging the paper with these prints, came from recycling bins, old National Geographic magazines that I've had saved for years, and other saved and repurposed materials. So, in conclusion, I hope this helps teach you about what punk philosophy means and what I'm trying to do with this work, and that it changes your own ideas about what mental health is to you.